Good morning to one and all. Vidya Vikas Mandal Margao has entered its golden jubilee year and is celebrating its 50th year of service to the cause of education in Goa. Set up in 1971, the Mandal saw its fair share of ups and downs in the early years. However, the founders persevered, and today Vidya Vikas Mandal has 5 well-known institutions functioning under its umbrella. Shree Damodar College of Commerce and Economics, the first educational institution established by Vidya Vikas Mandal in 1973, brings before you today the second lecture in the Spotlight series, a webinar on the topic NEP 2020, Recognizing and Leveraging Opportunities. We are extremely overwhelmed and grateful to our participants for the response received. We have amongst us Dr. Vidya Yeravdekar, Pro-Chancellor, Symbiosis International Deemed University, as our esteemed speaker. Professor Rajni Gupte, Vice-Chancellor of Symbiosis. Mr. Prasad Loliekar, Director of Higher Education. Professor Radhika Nayak, Registrar of Goa University. Members of the management and principals of various colleges, and our very own zestful President, Mr. Nitin Kunkolikar. Nitin Kunkolikar, sir, it is your privilege to welcome this August gathering. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Akshada. And first of all, a very good morning to all of you. Actually, it's my privilege as well as honor to, welcome such a galaxy of speakers and who are luminaries in their own field. So first of all, welcome to all of you. It's my privilege to welcome Dr. Vidya Yeravdekar, Dr. Rajni Gupte, Vice Chancellor of Symbiosis. Vidyaji is very well-known in the field of education, Pro-Chancellor of Symbiosis. Other very distinguished participants, my dear friend and Registrar of Goa University, Dr. Radhika Nayak, my friend and our college mate as well, who is Director of Higher Education, Prasad Loliekar, Principal Prita Malya, a very distinguished academician in the Goa, Dr. Manoj Kamath, Principal of Mallikarjun College, Principal Borkar. There are many other teachers, non-teaching people, my colleagues on the board. First of all, a warm welcome and a very good morning to all of you. In fact, Vidya Vikas is now 50 and our founders have left a very high legacy. And this year I have taken over as a president. So it's great honor and privilege for me to be part of Vidya Vikas when they are celebrating Golden Jubilee. And we thought we will have series of lectures from eminent personalities. And I'm grateful that Dr. Vidyaji agreed to speak to us. Vidya Vikas, has been told, is one of the renowned institutions in the field of education in Goa. We have close to almost 6,000. We have close to around 5,800 students in the campus, with the CBSE school, a commerce college, a law college, and we have a very diverse courses. And we are in process of looking at more expansions. So we were awaiting national education policy. I'm a very strong corporate person, though I was associated with a lot of other institutions. I was part of Goa Institute of Management and Goa Engineering College. I'm still on the board of Goa Engineering College. I'm also on the board of Goa IIT. So I've been very closely associated with field of education, and being a person from corporate field, I always try to work very closely with education to bridge the gap. The national education policy, which has been released after 30 years, is going to open a new era in the field of education.
I just want to see whether you will see others.
Can you please put on mute, please? So we look forward to a very new emerging India. Look at China. From 1970s, they started looking at education in a very different way. the integration of mind is a very important aspect. India was not focused on education to the extent what other parts of the world were focused. Like we could not come out with a very good innovation base. Though we had talent, we could not shape it. Though we had a lot of creativity, we could not commercialize. And that's where we had fallen prey to the Western countries or even South Asian countries. We lost out on many opportunities due to poor quality of understanding about the needs of the education, deployment of technology, understanding various aspects of education, integrating education as a whole. And in this regard, I could see an attempt has been made by introducing national education policy, which is a very structured process. As a president of MATE in Delhi, I was part of a lot of initiatives, even with Ministry of HRD, and we have been contributing a lot of inputs from a technology perspective as well. With the support of Dell, we had also initiated a project called as EduVision, and a lot of inputs have been incorporated in the policy. I'm grateful to the government for coming out with such a policy at this juncture. As a president of Goa Chamber of Commerce, I had also initiated the India as an education hub concept for the globe. And now we were trying to push Goa also as one of the major destinations from perspective of becoming one of the major education hubs. Looking at the profile of Goa, we thought we would have right atmosphere. And in this regard, recently government of Goa also has created a policy. They are in the verge of creating a policy for making Goa as an education hub to attract one of the world's best institutions. So I will leave it there, and I'm really eager to listen to the expertise of Dr. Vidya and Dr. Rajani and all others. I would be grateful if they can throw more light on what does that mean in terms of making a new India. Thank you. Thank you. And once again, welcome all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. It is my request to all the participants to kindly type in your questions in the chat box. We shall take note of your queries and address them during the Q&A session. I would now like to call upon Ms. Swati Bhatt to introduce the esteemed speaker of the day.
Good morning all. It is my privilege to you to introduce to the resource person for today's webinar, Dr. Vidya Yeravdekar. Dr. Vidya Yeravdekar is the Principal Director of Symbiosis Society, which encompasses the Symbiosis Schools, College of Arts and Commerce, and institutions under the Symbiosis International University. She is also the Pro-Chancellor of Symbiosis International University. A dream of her father, Dr. S.B. Muzumdar, founder and president of Symbiosis of Reading, creating a home away from home for international students, Symbiosis today has transformed itself multinational, multicultural, international university, having students not only from all states of India, but international students from 85 different countries. Dr. Vidya holds a postgraduate degree in medicine, a degree in law, and PhD in internationalization of higher education in India. She has been instrumental in bringing in innovative approaches to promote internationalization. Her foresight and leadership have been instrumental in creating strategic collaborations with universities across the globe. Dr. Vidya has been able to influence policy regulations, bringing in innovative approaches to higher education in India through her appointments on various governmental bodies. She has been a member of University Grants Commission for 2 terms, Central Advisory Board of Education, and Indian Council for Cultural Relations. She has also served as a member on many other organizations, such as Independent Director on the Board of Rights Limited under Ministry of Railways, Government of India, State Knowledge Advisory Board of Higher Education, Government of Andhra Pradesh, Subgroup on Higher and Technical Education, and Skill Development of Chief Minister's Advisory Council, Government of Rajasthan. She is a member of many corporate bodies such as Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce and Industry, Confederation of Indian Industry, and Maratha Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Dr. Vikas Mandal, Sri Damodar College of Commerce and Economics, I welcome you, ma'am. We all are eagerly waiting to listen to you, and without further ado, I hand over the session to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very kind introduction. And first of all, let me congratulate Vidya Vikas Mandal for entering its 50th year. And I must congratulate the president, Mr. Nitin Kunkolikar, and of course the Principal Malaya, for inviting me to speak at this webinar. I know that the new education policy, or the National Education Policy 2020, is a very exciting policy, and I get invited at several places, and now with webinars I do accept most of the invitations, and it's a pleasure to talk on this subject. But before I begin my talk on the subject, I would also like to tell you a little personal anecdote about the connection that we as a family have with Goa. So my father, Dr. Muzumdar, is the founder, president of Symbiosis. Maybe some of you may be knowing, you may have heard right now. And his family deities, or our family deities, hail from a small place called Veling, not very close to Panjim, but in Goa. And therefore, every year we have a Mahapuja there at the Narsimha Jayanti. And all of us come there in the month of May. And therefore, Goa holds a special place in my heart, because since childhood, I have wonderful memories of coming to this beautiful temple of Lakshmi Narsimha, and we do our puja there, and we spend the whole day, in fact 1.5 days, in the temple. And of course, apart from that, our children get to enjoy, all aspects of Goa otherwise. But for me, Goa is more spiritual, and therefore I have a very personal connection with Goa. The other connection, of course, is that Symbiosis, which was established by Dr. Muzumdar, has also entered the 50th year, and we're celebrating our golden jubilee like you all are. So we are as old as each other, the Vidya Vikas Mandal and Symbiosis. So this is also very good coincidence. And we too are arranging such webinars because first we all were very disheartened that, while we are entering our golden jubilee year and we are struck by COVID, what will happen to all the celebrations? But as everyone finds opportunities in times of crisis, we also did. And we have a series of webinars which are called as Symbiosis Golden Jubilee Lecture Series. And we have eminent people who actually come and address our faculty members, a large number of our students. And recently we had even organized a virtual Lit Fest, a Symbiosis Literary Festival, as a part of our Golden Jubilee celebrations. So I think both these institutions, Vidya Vikas Mandal and Symbiosis, share so much in common. And of course, Goa is a place which must become an education hub, as Mr. Nitin very rightly said, that it has a wonderful ecosystem. It attracts a large number of foreign tourists, and why should it not attract a large number of foreign students? And it's not just the Goa government, but I think the central government must take cognizance of the fact that Goa is a place that must be transformed into an education hub. And if there's anything that we can do on behalf of Symbiosis, or personally at my level, if I can push this at the Ministry of Education, I will definitely do this, and maybe speak to the education minister, the central education minister. And I think I'm very, very sure that they will take this up very seriously. Another but last connection that I must mention is, of course, who has studied in and senior leaders of educational institutions and schools. But there was consultation done with even students and all kinds of stakeholders, including the corporate world, and of course, most importantly, even the common man. So even gram panchayats were included in the discussion. So I think this is something that was never ever done before by the Indian government, which this government did. And I think this national education policy has evolved out of several and lakhs of consultations that happened. And I know because at that point in time, we as through FICCI were deeply involved, in these consultative, processes. The third is that this national education policy went through, I think, almost 4 education ministers, if I'm not mistaken. And because it went on for a long time, it wasn't framed just overnight or over 1 year. I mean, it took almost, I think, 3 to 4 years, for the national education policy to evolve. And therefore, I think it's a very, very robust policy. It is a policy which is very, very comprehensive, and a policy that is also inclusive. Because, otherwise, most national education policies kind of sway towards one sector of a class of society. But here you see that the national education policy is very, very inclusive. So I think this national education policy is totally different from earlier national education. I'm very happy that, internationalization of higher education, which is my own area of research and interest, and of course, for which Symbiosis was born, has held a very important position in this national education policy. If you run through the earlier policies, I don't think ever internationalization was included, and probably rightly so, because India then focused more on massification of education, equity and inclusion. But many countries feel that, this could be a policy even. So I think, we've never had such a wonderful national education policy that was evolved, and is not very long, but elaborate how this national education policy was evolved, what are the salient features, how could we as an institution, as a college, as a university, could implement some of the areas of this national education policy. So I have requested my office to actually share the screen, and therefore I would request Madhav to take me to the next slide, please. So as I said, this is the evolution of the education policies in India. We all know that the University Education Commission was conceptualized during this period, immediately post-independence. And then there was a Secondary Education Commission in 1952 to 1953, when the Secondary Education Commission was established. And we all have heard about it, as they call it even today, was what was conceptualized in 1964. So imagine several years ago, Dr. Kothari took a lot of interest and set up this education commission, which is called as the Kothari Commission. And even today, when new education policy is not the national education policy, but any policy that is formulated does make a mention of the Kothari Commission. The national education policy was again kind of conceptualized and executed in 1968. But the NPE of 1980s, or what was referred to till this new education policy came into existence. So we all went by the national education policy of 1986-92. There is a small anecdote to this national education policy of 1986 and 1992. At that point in time, Dr. P.V. Narasimha Rao, one of the most eminent politicians, I would say, of our country, was the HRD minister at that point in time. And surprisingly, the 1986 policy, Dr. Narasimha Rao took a lot of interest. And if you really find out, that Dr. Kasturi Rangan chaired this education policy, or before Kasturi Rangan, of course, Dr. T.S.R. Subramaniam was the chairman of the committee. If you really try to find out who was the chairman of the committee of the National Education Policy of 1986, you will not really find the name. You would find the name of Dr. Acharya for the 1992 amendment, but 1986, you won't find the name. And when I did a little bit of research to find out who were those people who were really, involved in the 1986 policy, I spoke to NUPA. You all know about the National, National University for Education Planning and Administration, which is based in Delhi. We all know about it. And the Vice Chancellor, Professor Varghese, is a dear friend of mine. And I called him and I said, you know what, you actually study education, you teach education, you do research in higher education and school education. Would you throw some light on the 1986 National Education Policy? And I'm trying to smile and laugh. And he said, Vidya, I was a very young researcher, almost a junior research fellow at that point in time. And you won't believe it, Dr. Narasimha Rao himself took so much interest, and he was so well-versed, and computers had probably just come in, and he was even well-versed with technology, that he would do his own research, he would find out things, and he would actually talk to all of us, all members who were there working on this national education policy. And Dr. Varghese says that, I was a junior research fellow, so I was actually put to write things of what the draft policy was. And it was such a pleasure to interact with Dr. Narasimha Rao. And then, of course, he became the Prime Minister. And the amendment that you see in 1992 was again brought in by him in 86, again, which actually looked at, the overall education structure post-independence after a long, long time. A lot of thought process was given. And I think 92, very rightly so, because at that point in time, he also brought in the LPG movement, the liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And therefore, I guess he believed as a prime minister that there needs to be some kind of amendments that need to be done. But we all refer to this 1986 policy. And then, of course, this government felt that it's almost more than 30 years. And the government rightly felt that India does require a national education policy. And initially, of course, it was the TSR Subramaniam committee. And when Prakash Javadekar became the HRD minister, he wasn't really very happy with the way the policy was drafted. In fact, Prakash Javadekar hails from Pune. That was very closely associated with the establishment of symbiosis. He used to be a volunteer working, for foreign students. And therefore, it was a very cordial relation we still have with him. And during some informal discussions, he did mention that the policy that was framed by the TSR Subramaniam committee was good, but he wanted it still better. And who better could he have invited than one of the most eminent scientists of our country, Dr. K. Kasturirangan. And I don't know whether you all have got a chance to interact with Dr. K. Kasturirangan. And if you haven't, I would request Mr. Nitin and Principal Malaya to invite him for a talk, with your faculty and with your leadership. And you will know that he's such a wonderful person, and he has such a holistic knowledge of not just what he is well versed in, I think more importantly, the overall education system of our country and probably of the world. And therefore, I think under his chairmanship, he brought in wonderful people. I mean, some from India, some from outside India. We all know who the committee members were. And this whole stakeholder consultation that was done, and a very, very robust, inclusive, comprehensive policy was rolled out. In fact, it was ready in 2019, and we all know that we were eagerly waiting for this policy to be rolled out. And, it was lying at the Prime Minister's office. So imagine a national education policy being looked at very deeply by the Prime Minister himself and the Prime Minister's office, because I know when I interacted with one of the joint secretaries at the PMO for something else, and I just mentioned to him, why are we waiting for the policy to be rolled out? Is it that the Prime Minister himself is so interested? And he said, yes, you won't believe it, that the Prime Minister himself is going through, the policy, and he would, make in not very major changes, but certainly look at it more deeply and try to suggest some new things. And probably he has done that, because when it was rolled out on the 29th of July 2020, you had the Prime Minister who addressed a large gathering, and that's when we realized that how much importance education has received with this government. And I'm sure all of you, like I do, feel very happy about this, that the leadership at the helm of affairs, the head of the state, is interested in education, which means a lot to the country, because we all believe that the development of any country does rest on quality education that is provided. And therefore, the education policy of 2020 was rolled out in July, on the 29th of July. Next. So, what has the new education policy really covered, and what is its vision? So it has a new and forward-looking vision for the overall Indian higher education system. We all know that the Indian higher education system is one of the largest, in fact, the third largest in the world. And therefore, we could be dictators of a higher education system across the globe. And what does this really, what does this policy look at, and what is its vision? It talks about the 21st century requirements. It talks about quality of higher education. And it also says that it must develop good, thoughtful, well-rounded, and creative individuals. Now, each and every word is very important. I mean, if you look at what is education for, or what are colleges and universities for, or what is higher education and school education for, then each of these words are very, very important and equally important for an education system. It must enable an individual to study one or more specialized areas of interest. Now, we know that this policy is focused on the word multidisciplinary, and therefore, they believe that, the committee and, the stakeholder consultation that was done, each one of us believes that, an individual should not have a tunnel view knowledge of just one discipline, but have, a more holistic knowledge with some areas of deep interest that he or she must develop, and also develop character, ethical and constitutional values, intellectual curiosity, scientific temper, creativity, 21st century capabilities across a range of disciplines. Now, this is so much to comprehend. Honestly, as I said, each and every word is important. You want people to be ethical. We want our young students to hold constitutional values. We also want them to be creative. We also want them to serve the society. And we also want them to be capable, to be employable, to have the 21st century skills. How can all this happen? And if you go through the salient features of the policy, they've actually made it happen. And if we really implement it in our institutions, I'm sure we'll create individuals the way the policy has envisioned. Next. So what are the salient features of the NEP 2020? As I said, if you look at this word multidisciplinary, and if you count the number of times it has appeared, I'm sure it is more than 100 times that it has appeared in the 64-page document, which is a summary of this national education policy. I would also like to suggest to some of you that, you must read the 64-page document of the national education policy, which some of you may have read. But I think what is more important to read is the draft of the national education policy 2019, because so every paragraph that is mentioned in the 64-page document has several pages of the discussions that have happened through the period of 17 to 19, and therefore I think you all must read the draft national education policy than reading just the education policy. So what are the salient features? It is a policy which defines holistic nature and multidisciplinary education. The framers of this policy believe that by 2040, our education system should be more holistic and should be multidisciplinary. They also believe that by 2035, we should have a gross enrollment ratio of 50%. We all know that presently not bad. I mean, we've grown up pretty exponentially. I remember having given talks when I was a member of the University Grants Commission, I think from 2006 to 2012. And which was not more than 18, 20, 22. And now we talk about a GER of 27, 26 point something, close to 27, which is pretty good for a country with a population of our size. But certainly we need to go up to 50, because if we have to run the race, and if we have to catch up with people, with countries who are far, far better than us, then we need to do something with the education system of our country so that it has access to each and every individual who needs that access. The other important, aspect of this national education policy is to give autonomy. I think as colleges and even as universities, we know how much of this whole regulatory system creates a havoc in our lives. And therefore, I think the autonomy that is required, and it's not just academic autonomy, but academic, administrative, and financial autonomy is a hallmark again of this policy. Now, how are they going to implement it? I will come to that. But we need an autonomous system, definitely, of the whole higher education system in India. But of course, it should be graded. And therefore, the word graded is important. What do you mean by graded autonomy? And that for deemed universities, there is a regulation that has already come out that they say that, institutions or colleges or universities that are doing well by the standards that have been established by the University Grants Commission. So if you are, accredited with A++ of NAC, or if you are amongst the top 50 colleges or universities in India, then you will get me, which means if, this graded autonomy is that if your grades are high, then we will give you the autonomy. And that is very right, because, we've also seen, the nuances of giving autonomy. We all know that, if too much of autonomy is given at an institutional level or even at an individual level, when we practice as leaders, we realize that, people can create havoc. And therefore, only people or institutions who are good, who are trustworthy, and who we know that they are on the path of excellence should receive this autonomy. So that is again a hallmark of this NEP. They've also mentioned that they will increase the public expenditure from what is at 4.43% to 6%. But we all know that even out of this 4.43%, what is on higher education is still minuscule. This is very, very ambitious. I mean, it's easy to say that we will increase it to 6% of GDP, but I doubt how much it could be implementable. And therefore, this is something that we all will aspire, but we will certainly watch. Another hallmark is that They definitely talk about the impact of globalization. They talk about internationalization, but they also talk about focusing on Indian knowledge systems, which is the language, culture, and values. And I think, again, this is very important. Why do foreign students come to India to study? I mean, we see that there are students who come from Afro-Asian countries to actually do their degree programs, but we also see students from developed countries like some of the European countries or US or Singapore. They do come to us. And why do they come to us? Because they also want to study the Indian system of education. And when we talk about the Indian system of education, is it that they want to study business management and commerce and all that? Probably it won't be relevant to them. But what is important and relevant to them is, what is our culture? What is our heritage? What is yoga? So these are things that they are interested and therefore, and Indian languages. I mean, so many of the foreign students come and study Sanskrit and several other languages. I remember having visited Charles University, in Prague, and one of the oldest universities of the world. And they have a Sanskrit department. In fact, they have a department of Indian studies, and a professor now who's become a good friend, Professor Martin, speaks Bengali, Tamil so fluently because they have so much interest. How many of us really read or language plays a very, very important role to understand cultures of different countries. And therefore, there is going to be a focus on Indian knowledge system. They also have focused on adult and lifelong education. I mean, this is playing a major role now. I mean, does education really stop at 10 plus 2 plus 3, or now it is 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4? Or does education stop at the master's level or the PhD level, or should education continue? And I think the way the world is growing, I don't think any degrees of any nature, even a doctoral degree, would not suffice 10 years later, because things would have changed, and therefore lifelong learning and adult education is very important. Again, a focus on online and digital education, as Professor Mr. Nitin very rightly said just now. Connectivity is a major challenge in our country. And while we talk about online and digital education, I think what the government needs to focus is on giving that connectivity to each and every student and every person, however remote the village or area could be. Next. So some more salient features. One of the most important features, and which we are trying to implement at Symbiosis, is the flexibility of the curriculum, so exit and entry. Now, it's easier said than done, but we need to certainly study this more deeper. We've tried to see whether we could implement this at Symbiosis. And it's a challenge even for a private university or a deemed to be university like Symbiosis, which definitely enjoys more autonomy than public institutions. But even then, it's not easy to give a flexible curriculum and to allow students to enter and exit at any given point in time. I think we need to have a very robust system. And then we come to this next point of academic bank of credits. In fact, it's a credit bank that used to be earlier called, but because they wanted to use the acronym ABC, made it the academic bank of credits. But be as it may, the credit bank is something that should first happen, and create a credit bank for your university, or you create a credit bank of your own collaborative partners, say some of your foreign universities and yours, and then imagine a student takes admission to Damodar College, and he decides to choose which are those credits that which are those subjects that I want to take. And say if your 3-year BCom program is of 150 credits, imagine a student can actually decide that these are the subjects that I want to pick up from this credit bank. And, once I pick up these subjects, and the total of which becomes 150, then you should give me a degree. Do we have a system like this as yet? No. What if the student decides that I do 2 years, and after the second year, I get a good internship or a good job or a good apprenticeship in some company, and I want to exit? And you as a college tell him that, okay, you can exit now, and we allow you to come back after 2 years to complete the last year and give you the degree. I mean, what a wonderful situation it would be for students. But are we prepared for this? I don't think so. And therefore, I think some of the leading universities and colleges like us, who are pretty old, should get into this, creating these credit banks and allowing a few of, the students from few of the programs to, exit and enter at different points in time. So this is something that needs more, in-depth study and research. The regulatory framework, they're talking about a light, but they are using the word tight. So we don't know whether the light will dominate the tight or the tight will dominate the light, because we know a regulatory framework. The word regulatory itself is synonymous with something which is tight. So we've all experienced this, and this is something that the Babu sitting in Delhi will have to execute. And I hope that they change their mindset the way we have changed, and that's when the light word will dominate the tight word. The National Research Foundation, again, is something that the world was actually looking at. I mean, when academia would speak to us and talk about research funding, we would really feel ashamed to tell them that there is still discrimination between public and private universities. I mean, if you have projects going to the DST and DBT, and no matter how good your project is, there is a bias towards the public sector. And because somewhere there is a belief that the private sector has a lot of money, they charge large number of tuition fees. So why do they receive any kind of funding, even if it amounts to research funding? And therefore, I think this mindset needs to change. And I think for the implementation of any policy, mindsets of people who are implementing and executing it at the helm of affairs needs to change. And this National Research Foundation probably is going to change the whole paradigm or the whole ecosystem of research, because what they've said is that there will be a common fund, and research proposals from faculty members will come directly to the National Research Foundation, and like the National Science Foundation or any other research foundations that exist in the world, this will function without a bias, only on the quality of research. And I really hope that this gets implemented. As I said, internationalization of higher education is something that I was involved in. And what the national education policy talks about is to increase the number of foreign students that come to India. In fact, I have a slide on internationalization, and I will talk about it a little later. They also talk about a single regulator for higher education. So I really don't like these two lines of light and tight regulatory framework and a single regulator for higher education. Can a policy maybe after 20 years define that there is no regulatory mechanism and it is self-regulation? I think we need to mature to that level, but I can understand. I've been on the other side, sitting at the UGC as a member and at the Central Advisory Board as a member. And I know that, autonomy has its own, pros and cons. How do you bring in autonomy with accountability is a huge challenge, whether I'm sure as principals and as leadership at your college, and so do we, the Vice Chancellor, Dr. Gupta, and I notice it, that the moment you give a little bit of, dhila, ye kar diya, so, the moment you give a little bit of autonomy, you wonder whether, the person will be accountable or not. And therefore, you have to always believe that, you can give autonomy only to those who trust, those who you trust. But can we evolve into a system where you can give that autonomy to at least a class, the way you've given that graded autonomy to a class of institutions that will really fly sky high, and you will not require a regulator at all. The national education policy also defines integration between vocational education, between teacher and professional education. So this is something that they have defined. We've always discussed this on several occasions at the UGC, because still vocational education is kind of underrated. And unless and until it finds a level playing field with professional education, vocational education is not going to see the light of the day, because BWOC programs are still not well accepted either by the students themselves or even by the industry. So can the vocational programs actually look at a horizontal integration with some of the professional programs is what the national education policy talks about. Next, please. So there have been a large number of reforms that have been, discussed in this national education policy, and the whole focus is on high quality higher education, as I said, with equity and inclusion. So what do they really look at? I mean, to implement these salient features that I just described, government planning to do. So they plan to have large multidisciplinary universities and colleges. Okay, so they are not talking about, so earlier, if you look at even the deemed university concept, it was more of a unitary university. So deemed university status was given to an institution that had niche excellence and expertise in a given particular subject or few subjects at the master's level or the doctoral level with high-end research. So it was very, very focused institutions that were considered to give a university status. And now the whole thought process has changed, and now the government is talking about having large multidisciplinary universities. So it's more of a horizontal spread that they're really looking at. So multidisciplinary universities, multidisciplinary colleges. They're talking about undergraduate education. Sorry, I think someone's mic is on. So they also talk about multidisciplinary undergraduate education. So if you look at the Damodar College of Commerce, and you would probably have a BCom degree or or a BA degree, they're looking at whether you can have a multidisciplinary degree. And we've this year, because we also have a Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce, which you may be aware of, which is still affiliated to Pune University, because we wanted to keep that umbilical cord still intact with the Pune University. And this college has been re-accredited by NAC 3 times with an A++. It is a college for potential for excellence, considered under RUSA scheme. So it's doing very, very well. And there we've just this year implemented a BCom, which is interdisciplinary nature, where we've included a large number of liberal arts, education, as well as change the whole pedagogy and the curriculum. And therefore, can we look at multidisciplinary undergraduate education is what, this policy envisages. They're talking about giving faculty and institutions the autonomy that I've discussed and elaborated. Revamping the curriculum, pedagogy, and assessments and student support. I think the assessment, again, this word is very important. How do you evaluate your students? Can you really look at a very innovative assessment system? Because finally, what you teach your students is not as important as, you understand what they have learned. So I think the learning aspect of it has to be assessed through these assessments. And I think the evaluation and the assessments has not really gotten that much of importance in the past, which this national education policy has given. And therefore, no matter how good your teachers are, no matter what kind of pedagogy you use, no matter what kind of curriculum you have, as long as the student has not learned, all this goes to waste. And therefore, assessing whether the student has learned what you really wanted to deliver is something that is important. In public institutions, of course, in private institutions, we do have merit appointments, but they've spoken about a lot on, there's a whole chapter on faculty, and I won't elaborate it here. They've spoken about career progression, about merit appointments, etc. National Research Foundation is what I have spoken about. I've spoken about giving academic and administrative autonomy. So there is a whole chapter on the governance of higher education, where they also talk about not just the central government or the state governments giving autonomy to public institutions, but it also speaks about institutions like ours, where we have a private management, and how much does the private management give autonomy to its principal, and how much does the principal give autonomy to its faculty members. So when we talk about the governance, it's not just about the governance between the government and institutions, but it is also about the governance of a higher education institution and the autonomy that each one person enjoys in that higher education institution. Next, please. So the whole focus, as I said, is towards creating a more holistic and multidisciplinary education. So what they talk about is that 21st century education should focus on holistic and multidisciplinary learning with knowledge of many arts, which is also referred as liberal arts. So let me discuss a little bit about liberal arts. So at Symbiosis, we started a Center for Liberal Arts, I think way back in, if I'm not mistaken, in 2008 or 2009. If I'm not mistaken. So way back, we started a Center for Liberal Arts, and with the objective that this Center for Liberal Arts would support our Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce, because the Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce, as I said, is affiliated to Pune University. And at that time, we were not an autonomous college, and therefore we had to just stick to the syllabus that was approved by the Pune University. And that was very, very frustrating to some of our teachers and our principal, and of course to the management. And we said that how can we bring in this kind of flexibility and give them autonomy? How can we give a good curriculum to our students? Because we got excellent students, not just from the state of Maharashtra and the city of Pune, but even that 15% used to get overfull for students who came from all over the country. And our college really enjoyed the name and fame, but we definitely wanted it to be still upgraded to a higher level. And that's when Dr. Muzumdar sir thought that why can't we establish a Center for Liberal Arts so that students will do their commerce or arts as prescribed by the Pune University, the BA and BCom, but alongside take some certificates and diplomas from the Center for Liberal Arts. And you won't believe it, the Center for Liberal Arts gave them liberal education, right from film studies to theater to visual arts to dance to music to economics, you just name the subject. And we had wonderful teachers that we got from different colleges of Pune, even people from the industry who came and taught. And the Center for Liberal Arts got so popular that it was not just the BCom and BA students of Symbiosis College of Arts and Commerce who took the certificates and diplomas, but even colleges from the neighborhood. I mean, we had students from BMCC, from Ferguson College, and several other colleges who came in and did diplomas and certificates in the Symbiosis Center for Liberal Arts. So much so that we had to migrate the Center for Liberal Arts, or rather upgrade the Center for Liberal Arts to a School of Liberal Arts that we established in 2011. And we are the one and only institution in the country, a School of Liberal Arts, that offers a 4-year undergraduate program in liberal arts. And you won't believe it that when Smriti Irani was the chief, which was the education minister of our country, the HRD minister of our country, somehow, I don't know what went in her mind, and we all know that, the kind of havoc that she created with the education system, where she just shunned down the 4-year degree program that the Delhi University had envisioned. And I knew the Vice Chancellor of Delhi University. In fact, I know him very well. And he was a man who knew the education system so well. But I think she just believed that this is not something that India needs to do. And she actually brought down the 4-year program to 3-year, and she sent a diktat to all institutions across the country stating that if you are running a 4-year degree program, bring it down to a 3-year program. And surprisingly, many of the so-called liberal arts institutions or universities across India brought their 4-year program down to 3-year program. But we at Symbiosis said we will fight this in the court, because we don't want ministers to teach us education. We've spent 50 years in education. We know education far better than any politician knows. And therefore, we filed a case in the Mumbai High Court and won the case. And we were the only institution in the country, and we are still the only institution in the country to run a 4 years liberal arts program. And you won't believe it. What does this new education policy talk about? It talks about a 4-year undergraduate program. So life has come to a full circle for Symbiosis, and we have had the last laugh. And we said that, something that we fought against the government itself is now prescribing. I mean, isn't it ridiculous? But, sometimes you have ministers who just feel that they are right and they don't believe in discussions. And here you'll end up, in a situation where something that you actually resisted and even fought in the court against an institution, now the same thing is what you are prescribing in a national education policy. But what the learning with all this is that Symbiosis has always done what Symbiosis feels right, because we have the conviction and we know that, we don't just start things because we want to, but we've done enough and more research before we start any new program or any new institution. For starting the Center for Liberal Arts, we sent 2 of our very eminent teachers to visit some of the best liberal arts institutions in America, because liberal arts education is an American education system of education. And therefore, they went to and saw and sat with faculty members, with principals of various liberal arts colleges in America. And that's when they came back and said that we need to start a Center for Liberal Arts. And now, of course, the School of Liberal Arts, one of the most popular schools of Symbiosis. So now the education policy talks about the liberal arts kind of education. But here they also mention that it's not just about the flexibility of the curriculum, but again, a deep focus in some of the areas that the student may want to learn, with, of course, a focus on research, innovation, and entrepreneurship. So I won't go into the other details of what I've mentioned in the slide. It's a repetition of what I've already said. So the whole national education policy revolves around a holistic and multidisciplinary education, which will lead to global citizens with deep-rooted Indian, values and Indian knowledge systems. Next. So I've almost covered this. So they've also given a lot of emphasis on community engagement and environmental education and value-based education. Now, have we implemented this? I'm sure at Damodar College you must have. At Symbiosis, we of course have. So we do a lot of community engagement. I mean, we always believe that our students need to connect with the community in whatever they do. Fortunately, the Symbiosis University main campus is at a village called Lovely, which is on the outskirts of Pune. And we have almost 142 small villages surrounding our university campus, out of which the immediate neighborhood is of 22 villages. And we've kind of adopted or engaged with these villages on 2 aspects. One is health, and second is education. And you won't believe the way our students are engaged, whether it's the law students who started a free legal aid clinic, or we have management students or banking students who actually go and give some lessons on, in fact, they've all gone to the villages, and now there is not a single villager who doesn't have a bank account opened in the banks which are present in these villages. Two, of course, health, where we have a mobile clinic that goes around in these villages to treat patients. So we have our nursing students and our medical social workers and doctors who go on this mobile clinic. And we have diet and nutrition students who actually go and sit in Anganwadis and sit with the mothers of these young kids to talk about diet and nutrition, and our culinary arts students who go and teach how to prepare nutritious food, and so on and so forth. So much of community engagement, because we believe that it's not just about, as I said, it's not just about teaching in classrooms and learning, but it's about what and how this whole knowledge that you impart to our young men and women, how much of that will they really apply to society. And therefore, I think it's important to connect with the community and have community engagement programs in colleges and universities, alongside, of course, with environmental and value-based education. And we have a biodiversity club, and I would extend invitation to all of you to visit the Symbiosis International University campus and look at the kind of education that we provide. And I'm sure you also do, but there is always a learning from both sides, and therefore the kind of environmental education that we provide. We in fact run a program in MBA in environmental management, where energy and environment management, where a whole bunch of students are prepared for the corporate world to deal with environmental education. But alongside, we have biodiversity clubs and a lot of environmental studies that is taught alongside our normal management and commerce and arts courses. The global citizenship education is what the multidisciplinary education is all about. I mean, how do you prepare your students to actually become global citizens with the 21st century skills that are imparted, with internationalization of curriculum and internationalization in all the processes at the university and colleges that we have, and of course with deep-rooted Indian knowledge system. So this is something that is going to be a differentiator of the Indian higher education system, and that's when we will start dominating the higher education system of the world. So I think I've already spoken about most of what I've mentioned here, but again, I would like to highlight another new dimension of this national education policy is the one-year master's program. Now, again, just to give you something that Symbiosis has done, we used to lose out a lot of our law students after the bachelor's, after the LLB program, to the UK to do a one-year LLM, because when students wanted to do LLM, they didn't want to spend 2 years after they've done a rigorous 5 years program. And therefore, those who wanted to do their masters, which is the LLM program, would rush to the UK, do a 1 year and come back. So we approached the law minister then, Veerappa Moily was the law minister, and we told him this problem. And we said, what, like we are losing out, I'm sure several other universities and law colleges are losing out students. And, it's not just loss of revenue, but even loss of talent. And therefore, he took it so seriously that he wrote a letter to the University Grants Commission. And I was a member at that point in time. And I still remember Dr. Sukhdev Thorat was the chairman of the UGC. And he read out that letter in the commission, and he said that this is so important that a law minister could tell us as educationists that, India needs to roll out a one-year LLM program. So they gave a one-year LLM program to institutions, to law colleges, which had an advanced legal studies center. Fortunately, we had that because we already had a PhD program and we were doing research, good research in law. And therefore, Symbiosis, along with a few other universities, were allowed to roll out a one-year LLM program. Likewise, the National Education Policy is talking about a one-year master's program, and that would be wonderful, because if you want to retain the talent, then you need to have a flexible, education system that is conducive to students. They also talk about a 4-year degree program, as I said, and if the last year is dedicated to research, then you could get a direct entry into a PhD program. Now, how will this be implemented? I don't know, but I know that Indian Institute of Science, had a 4-year program, which when Smriti Irani told us to roll that back, what they did was that instead of rolling the 4-year degree program to a 3-year program, they were very smart enough. They said that we will keep the 4 years program as it is, but after 3 years, we'll give a BSc degree, and the 1 year that is there, we will dedicate it to research. So students who will continue to do the 4-year program will, in addition, get a 1-year research a kind of portfolio and then get directly into their PhD program. So this is what this new National Education Policy also talks about. It talks about a choice-based credit system, on which I have already spoken about, and of course, student support centers, etc. Next, please. So, I mean, I've mentioned this, that, what India requires is to revive back the old education system of what was when Takshashila, Nalanda, and Vikramshila were. So what this national education policy talks about is to create clusters, to create knowledge hubs in such a way that we revive this whole old concept of Takshashila, Nalanda, so that we can attract a large number of not just Indian but international students to study in our various institutions, colleges, and universities. They also talk about a change of nomenclatures, and I think it won't hold true so much for you, but certainly for us, because we have to use the nomenclature of deemed to be university, and it's so disheartening when we have foreign delegations coming. They actually ask us a question: are you a university or not? Because you say that you are a Symbiosis International deemed to be university. And this name is never ever used anywhere in the world. And we've said this to almost several education ministers. In fact, when Mr. Arjun Singh was the education minister, he had already issued a notification through UGC stating that deemed universities need not use the word deemed to be. But when you know how it happens, when politicians change, some of the policies also change. And then this notification was taken aback. And then we again were asked to use the word deemed to be university. But I'm so glad that Mr. Prakash Zavadekar, who was very keen that this word deemed to be should go, told this group of academia who were there on the task force that do something with this complex nomenclatures that we have and remove this, get this word removed, and let all higher education institutions which are of the status of universities be called universities. So I hope that the UGC comes up with this notification very soon. Next. So coming to internationalization, as I said that, we want to revive back of the status of what we had. I mean, we were a Vishwa Guru, and we had thousands of foreign students and scholars who came here to study when Takshashila, Nalanda, Vikramshila were there. And now how do we bring that back? So there is a very, very focused approach by the government. The government has formed a policy called A Study in India. And this was rolled out in 2018. And in fact, I'm happy to tell you that we from Symbiosis provided the whole backend support for this whole Study in India policy. So much so that Dr. Muzumdar sir was invited by Prakash Zavadekar and Sushma Swaraj, the then Minister of External Affairs, to Delhi, and he received the Lifetime Achievement Award because for the work that he's done in internationalization, especially for foreign students. And this policy was rolled out in a large gathering on the 18th of April 2018. And let me tell you that since this policy has been rolled out, the number of foreign students have certainly increased. But unfortunately, can you believe it, what our numbers are? Whereas we have 10 lakh Indian students studying abroad in various countries, primarily, of course, the US and then UK and Europe, and several other countries like Singapore, Malaysia, and so on. We have just 47,000 foreign students studying in our country. I mean, look at this, the mismatch. I mean, we're losing out almost $4.6 billion US outside, and what are we really gaining? I mean, even if you look at the commercial angle of this, but I think what is more important is not the commercial angle, but, education as a soft power. I still remember that, Symbiosis has churned out several foreign students. In fact, Pune being the education hub is thanks to Symbiosis for having attracted foreign students, and thanks to Dr. Muzumdar for having established Symbiosis for foreign students, that these foreign students go and assume top positions in their home countries. I mean, we've had several ministers. I remember Mahendra Uchana, who was a Mauritian student studying with us in the 70s, was a minister for energy and environment in the government in the government of Mauritius. We had a transport minister of Yemen who was our student. Surprisingly, the deputy prime minister of Yemen was a student of Symbiosis. So several students have assumed not just leadership positions in the government, but as diplomats, as businessmen. I mean, you can't imagine what students can do to a country from where they've passed out. But unfortunately, the Indian government has ignored these foreign students. They don't even have an alumni base of foreign students. I mean, I can just say that if any academician, I mean, if even someone like Dr. Muzumdar could fly to Iran and hold a gathering, I'm sure there'll be thousands of students who passed out of several universities and colleges in Pune city, including Symbiosis and Pune University, would come and want to meet him. I still remember that we had an invitation from the government of Mauritius, from the education minister. And Dr. Muzumdar very rarely travels out of India. And he was invited by the minister, and therefore I could convince him to travel. And you won't believe it, at the airport, as we landed and came out, there were 150 of senior students who passed out of Symbiosis in the 70s with their families, with their wives and children, waiting to welcome Dr. Muzumdar with a huge placard of "Welcome our father." So it was so touching, because these are emotional things that, that we as Indians get linked to. I mean, we never look at education as a commercial entity. We believe that these kind of emotional bonds are really going to help. And imagine if India becomes an education hub, a Vishwa Guru, the kind of soft power that it will have and the way it will lead will be amazing. And now it is time that the minister, not only that the Ministry of Education is in play, but you won't believe it, that the Ministry of Commerce, I sit on the governing board of the Services Export Promotion Council of the Ministry of Commerce, and now Ministry of Commerce is looking at education as a service that can be exported, and that's what we discuss in the meetings that we have in Delhi. So it's the Ministry of Commerce, it's the Ministry of External Affairs, where the Foreign Secretary himself interacts with us to find out what should be done in the embassies, in various Indian embassies, and how can Indian education be promoted. So it's not just about one ministry, including the Ministry of Home Affairs, because the visas finally have to be granted by them. So now education has become an interdisciplinary, subject for discussion, or interministerial subject for discussion. So much so that recently the Niti Aayog took upon itself, and Mr. Amitabh Kant and Mr. Rajiv Kumar, the Vice Chairman of Niti Aayog, convened a meeting of this interministerial group, and I was fortunate to be there, where discussions happened as to how do we attract and how do we take this 47,000 number to 200,000 to 2 lakh international students that we so deserve to have. So internationalization is definitely going to play a major role. It's not just going to be limited to a few elite institutions like the Symbiosis or Manipal or BITS Pilani, but I'm sure even colleges like yours and in Goa, you can certainly attract a large number of foreign students, because Goa itself is so popular amongst the international crowd that every student who studies in any university in India in its lifetime in India will definitely have visited Goa at least once, because he cannot return back to his country without visiting Goa. It would be a shame. And therefore, I'm sure you will be able to attract a large number of foreign students. But is it just about attracting foreign students, or is it about having long-term relationships with foreign universities so that it helps sharing best practices, it helps build capacity amongst our faculty? That is something that we need to also look at when we talk about internationalization. I can give a whole lecture on internationalization of higher education. Maybe you can invite me again to speak on this subject. So I will move on to the next slide, please. Again, as I said, there is a huge emphasis on faculty, because we all believe that the backbone of every higher education and school education institution is our teachers. And I think that is the wealth that we have. I mean, if we didn't have good faculty, we couldn't have boasted to say that we are a good institution. So you could get good students through a very rigorous selection process. But how do you churn these good students into good human beings? And there is where the faculty play an important role. And I think the role of a teacher is so noble that it is almost next to a role of a mother, I would say. And therefore, I think that much of importance we as educationists, as leadership people must give to our own faculty members. And this national education policy has certainly given a lot of emphasis on faculty. And I think there is a role that faculty must also play, that faculty should always feel that they should upgrade their knowledge. They should participate a lot in faculty development programs. And of course, how can they also assume leadership positions? So should they remain just as teaching faculty, or emphasize on research, or can move into leadership positions, is an ecosystem that I think we need to create at various colleges and universities in India. Next, please. As I said, I already spoke about this. I think teacher education, because they just don't want to work on the existing faculty, but how can we create good faculty members? And I think this is something which is very close to Dr. Kasturi Rangan's heart. And in fact, he spoke to me personally, and he said, Vidya, if Symbiosis can roll out a 4-year B.Ed program, and the first 2 years should be common, which should be like any other liberal arts program, and the last 2 years should be dedicated for in-depth study of education. And that will, when institutions like Symbiosis and others actually roll out a 4-year degree program, that is when the teacher education will get popular. And let me again get you back to an anecdote where, there was always a 3-year LLB program. You see 5-year LLB programs only since the last probably 2 decades or 3 decades. And it was Dr. Muzumdar who spoke to Ram Jethmalani. Ram Jethmalani, one of the most eminent lawyers of our country. And for me, he was like a father figure to me, and to Symbiosis, a very, very close friend. He would come and teach at our law school almost every month. And when he spoke to Ram Jethmalani, and both of them discussed that why should there be a 3-year LLB program, and why can't there be a 5-year LLB professional program like a medical program or an engineering program? Because Muzumdar sir believed that, people who come and join the 3-year LLB program probably come and join because they've not got into any other professional program. So can we make a law program very professional? And, 2 institutions in the country that decided to do that. It was because of Ram Jethmalani, who knew the law minister then, and of course things moved. And it was Dr. Muzumdar who actually conceptualized this along with Mr. Jethmalani. Only 2 institutions in the country launched a 5-year law program, and it was Symbiosis Law School, Pune, and the National Law University, Bangalore, that was established to launch a 5-year law program. And now, it's no looking back. I mean, the law program in any institution, I'm sure, including yours, is one of the most popular professional programs that, talented students want to get into. I mean, the Symbiosis Law Schools, we have 4 law schools. After one, we created 4 law schools, one in Pune, one in Noida, one in Nagpur, and one in Hyderabad. And you won't believe it, there are about more than 50,000 students every year who apply to about 200 seats per institution that we have. So you can imagine how this program was made popular. And therefore, if some of us decide to do a 4 years integrated B.Ed program, a multidisciplinary program, probably that will gain the same popularity as what a law program will give. And another new thing that they've also got, which we want to implement at Symbiosis, is that for all PhD students, you have a research methodology course. In your coursework, you teach research methodology. Now, they said that can you also teach education as a science, to all your PhD students, because almost 99% of the PhD students move on to become teachers in higher education. So can that be done at Symbiosis, is what Dr. Kasturirangan spoke to me, and I'm sure our Vice Chancellor has taken this up, and we will be implementing this very soon. Next, please. Vocational education, I've already discussed about. I mean, how do you integrate vocational education into conventional programs? And of course, at the school level, can we teach one vocation to every child, is what is discussed in the NEP 2020. Next, please. Research. Now, coming to research, we all know that India is so very poor, and the investment of the Indian government in research is minuscule as compared to even governments like Israel and South Korea, leave alone the USA. So what can we do? And research forms a major portfolio when it comes to ranking, when it comes to accreditation. And we all know, whether it's your college or our university, is so very difficult to change mindsets of people, of our own teachers, because they believe that they're excellent teachers, and why do they need to do research? And for us, at least as a university, the argument is that, are we a college or a university? And if we are a university, then we need to produce new knowledge. And what is it, that new knowledge that we need to produce, and how do we produce it unless our faculty are tuned to, publish papers and, look at new things in patents and so on and so forth. So our Vice Chancellor is here. I'm sure she'll have more to say on this one slide than me, but she goes through difficult times when it comes to submitting data on research publications of our university. Of course, the picture is very good. We established a separate and dedicated center called the Symbiosis Center for Research and Innovation in 2009. Again, the idea of Dr. Muzumdar, to have a dedicated center that will encourage and mentor our faculty members to publish papers, to do research, and so on and so forth. So since 2009, our publications and the quality, not only the quantity, but quality has also grown up. But as a country, where are we? I mean, we are really very pathetic. I mean, it is a shame when, hardly any institutions are included in the recent, list that was rolled out by the Stanford University of the top 2% scientists, a list that came out. And, of course, there are a few Indian universities, including Symbiosis, but I mean, what are the numbers of, if you look at South Korea and if you look at, several other countries which are far, far smaller than ours, and we don't even want to talk about China and USA. So what should we do to, increase this whole research portfolio of not just our institution, but of our country, is what is discussed. And I think National Research Foundation is a first step, because we all know that research requires good enough funding, and not just funding from institutions, but certainly from the public sector, which is the government. How do we bring in industry closer to us to do joint research? I mean, you have R&D centers of several industry houses in their corporate, structure. Why can't they put up plants, research R&D centers on university and college campuses? Can we change that mindset of the industry? And I would request Mr. Nitin, who's on the chamber, the Goa Chamber of Commerce, where he could discuss with the industry as to why can't they actually outsource their research R&D to some of the good colleges and institutions across India, or at least in the state. So this is what is discussed in the National Education Policy on research. Next, please. I won't go into these details because these are more theoretical than what I would like to discuss. And we all know that they want to have a single regulatory system. How they are going to do it, I don't know. Whether UGC is going to, whether the NHERC and a lot of acronyms that they've given here, how different are they going to be from the present regulatory mechanism or the bodies that we have? Again, this is something that I would rather keep this for more theoretical discussion than really practical. They've also discussed about curbing commercialization, and when we talk about the private sector, the one disheartening news or discussions every time you sit in the UGC or elsewhere in any government offices is the kind of profiteering that is done, and the kind of fees that are charged, and the kind of donations that are taken. So something has to be done with this, because if you really want to, I know that education comes at a cost, and it must. For Symbiosis, our fees are not low, our fees are pretty high. But do we plow back each and every penny of the surplus that we make into the development of Symbiosis? And can all institutions think that way? Instead of creating personal wealth of people who have created institutions, can this actually be public wealth that can be used for creating more and more institutions that will help more and more students? And Symbiosis is a wonderful example of how this has been done. I'm sure your college is equally a good example, and I think we should set such examples for others to follow. So this is another chapter in the National Education Policy. Next, please. So now coming to how can it be implemented? So, they have discussed about creating a strategic institutional development plan. And I would suggest that every college or every university, and we are at a stage where we plan to do this, that going by what the National Education Policy is, can we, for our university or you, for your college, create a strategic institutional development plan? And I would suggest that, you form a steering committee of important people who are not just academic people, but even people from the industry or people from the NGOs, because you need diverse views to come in, maybe people from outside of India, so that, you actually get views from different parts of the country, from different parts of the world, and from different stakeholders as to how do you create and how do you align your college, or how do we align our university to the National Education Policy? How do we create a wonderful multidisciplinary university for the betterment of creating global citizens with deep-rooted Indian values? So if that's one bottom line of what this whole National Education Policy prescribes, how does a Damodar College of Commerce actually get transformed into, what the National Education Policy has prescribed? So I would suggest to Professor Mr. Nitin is that create a steering group of people who will help you to make this transformation. Because when there is inbreeding, then it is the same. It is the same thought process that gets discussed. I'm sure you have great people within your system, but try and get people who are outside the system, who would think in an unbiased way and who would probably give you suggestions that you've never ever thought of. So to create an institutional development plan, first create a steering committee. Next, please. Try and create a liberal arts program. So though you are a College of Commerce, as we did, can we create an interdisciplinary liberal arts program in the BCom program? And for which you will require a lot of institutional restructuring to be done. So you could have your same faculty teachers. Teaching a liberal arts program is different from teaching a pure commerce program or a pure science or a pure arts program in a classroom, which is prescribed by the affiliating university. So I would suggest that you should come and see what we do at our liberal arts school, and some of you could send some of your faculty, and if you can create a wonderful program that will supplement the same degree program that you may have to run for some years till this National Education Policy gets implemented by the affiliating university. You could want to set up a liberal arts program alongside this, for which you will, as I said, you will have to do a lot of institutional restructuring, which means you may have to establish a center, or you may have to have different people, and may have to put in more resources, or whatever, institutional restructuring that you may want to do. Could you create an academic credit bank where, your students are doing the BA and the BCom program, but alongside pick up some credits from, from this Center for Liberal Arts or some other departments that you established to do? Could you set up a good student affairs or a student support department? And if you don't have one, please set up an international office or an office for international relations, which will help attract foreign students. I don't know what the laws of the state government of Goa, of the government of Goa are, and if they are conducive and if they are conducive enough to attract foreign students, then I must say that you need to have a dedicated department to do this, because foreign students is not just about having students from different countries, but about getting the diversity in the classrooms when it comes to discussions. So if you have a student from Nepal and from Ethiopia and from say Tanzania and from Thailand, imagine the kind of discussions that will happen, and the bonds that will be developed between your students who are from Goa and these students from different countries. So I think this whole element of diversity, which is so required for a secular system, for a system that is not so nationalist, for a system to create a holistic program, for a system to create a global mindset, you need these kind of diverse discussions and diversity of thoughts that should happen in classrooms. So I think foreign students' presence is important for bringing in this kind of diversity. Next, please. Again, faculty training and upgradation, I'm sure you are doing it. We have a teaching and learning resource department. We run a large number of faculty development programs. We get resources from both India and outside India. We'll be more than happy to extend our services to your college and to your faculty. How do you strengthen research? As I said, we formed a Symbiosis Center for Research and Innovation. Can the Damodar College have a dedicated department of research? I'm going by the proviso that you don't have, but I'm sure you do. And how do we strengthen that research portfolio of the college? Because we shouldn't believe that colleges are only meant for teaching and employment generation. I think research is an inherent part of academic discourse, and therefore for every college or university, I mean, if you can get in the research element into classrooms, there cannot be anything better. Online and digital education, can we provide access of your college to several others in Goa who do not have access to education? So, something, whether vocational education is something that you want to get in, leadership development programs, and as I said, strategic developing institutional development plan, which can align with the National Education Policy 2020. Next. So I think I've discussed enough, and I haven't even looked at the time because I don't know how much time you had really given me. But this is what I wanted to share. We would love to collaborate with you, because we are also at a stage where, we are just in the process of forming a steering committee, which will help us to, upgrade our institution, our university to a level that, that the National Education Policy does prescribe. On the 17th of December, we have the university's convocation, which is virtual. And we've purposely invited Dr. K. Kasturirangan for this. So we'll be more than happy to extend the invitation to listen to his talk. Maybe some of you would want to listen to his talk, because he will speak on the National Education Policy and how institutions like Symbiosis can implement this. This is something that that is what I wanted to discuss, and I'll be more than happy to take questions or contribute in whatever way.
Thank you, madam, for such a wonderful talk. And I must say that our understanding about national education policy, you have made it so simple, and I could derive a lot of inputs from that, and a very strategic input also for us from your learned experience. So first of all, I must thank you for such a wonderful presentation, and I would raise some of the issues. And before that, I must tell, it was glad to know that you are linked to deity goddess of willing. Incidentally, it belongs to my father-in-law's family as well. So that brings us much closer, and I keep going there for every function. So next time when your Mahapuja is there, we would be certainly there if you invite. Yeah, thank you. Secondly, I must also tell you that we also share common, I won't say friends, he's beyond a friend. Dr. Mashelkar, he talks very high about you all the time. Every time he's very close to me personally for last 20 years as a family. And we share a very close bond. He has been part of our lot of initiatives for the state, and he had also structured a lot of things. And Dr. Kasturirangan, undoubtedly the best among, most of the intellectuals we have come across. I'm glad that you are lucky to have him with you all. And certainly we look forward to his engagement. If you could connect him to us, I would be grateful. Actually, about him, I had also spoken to my friend Rakesh Shashibhushan of Antrix, CMD of Antrix. He's there also because it's part of ISRO, so they were closely associated. So I'm sure I have a better connect now through you. So would seek your help in his address. So third part, I must tell you also another important aspect. Goa is sandwiched between South and West. And South Manipal group also has a common interest in Goa. They are also have a Goan roots. They belong to Goa originally, ancestrally. And in West, now we have symbiosis leadership, and we are now sandwiched. So I think jointly, both of these top most institutes of this country can take initiative to make Goa as one of the best education hub. I think Goa's future would be bright. So I don't think industry alone creates economic growth. And one of the beliefs that I have for last so many months is that so many years that economic activity is better created by even service institutions like educational sector. And that's why a policy change is required from a legacy approach to a forward approach in opening up this education sector is very important. And I'm glad that you have touched upon this issue. Of course, over privatization is not what I really endorse, but a sustained privatization, understanding what government can't do, private sector can reach out to that. And I think this is where we would seek your help. And if you are interested in Goa, definitely it will be a pleasure to help you in whichever way Symbiosis wants to do. We would also connect with Manipal group so that we can build up a very good synergy for Goa. And thanks for
you already have a BITS Pilani there.
Yeah, BITS Pilani also was one of our initiative when I was Chamber of Commerce president. That time, that land was belonging to Zwari, and we issued reversal notices for them. So then they said, okay, we will set up BITS Pilani. They met Mr. Parikar. Then that's how BITS Pilani came up. Today, IIT has come up, NIT has come up. Goa Institute of Management is a fantastic campus. Yeah, so Goa is certainly a hub, but it needs to go beyond a point. Even we look at educational tourism. See, the educational sector pays the best today in the country. Industry does not pay as much except in software. Manufacturing sector is not a very good paymaster except for the top products, unless until you are in the end use segment. So education sector per capita spending towards employees much higher. Salaries are higher. Only thing, government should create some regulator and try to create a balance in this sector. And I will also touch upon the autonomy part which you mentioned, which is very, very important. I'm grateful for that thought of yours. At Vidya Vikas, we are also working out. In fact, we also created a cell for last 3 years when I was vice president also, we created a lot of initiatives for decentralized from the management to the principal level, from financial powers to everything. Now, most of the things we have delegated. And we are also now encouraging principals to delegate further to the faculties. So you will definitely see this happening in a couple of years. But we would like to learn from, we would seek mentorship from your institute to take Vidya Vikas to newer heights. Even we would be happy if you are open for collaborations. We can create a new institute at Vidya Vikas Mandal, because we are also now looking at expansion of courses, expansion of institutions. So that is what our next agenda for next 3 years, which we would like to drive. One point I would like you to also share, that would be my question. It's going to be a converged world, and technology is getting converged. Everything is getting converged. World is becoming a small village. How would you look at the changing pattern of education in terms of e-education? India has a challenge of imparting education, especially the rural India, and extreme poor and extreme rural India has challenges. They don't have connectivity, they don't have power. So probably renewable energy could be a solution. Is there a way we can look at complete virtual education which can transform? Because the government of India as of now is not promoting virtual education for a degree purpose. If that can come up, It can benefit the poor India, and education also can be delivered at a cheapest price. You can even allot degrees within 10,000 rupees. I mean, you can make it so cheap by giving some free distribution of laptops. There are enough CSR resources available in the country which can help you to overcome this. So this is one of the topic I would like to request you to address. And one thought always comes to my mind: why are our HRD ministers uneducated people? This is something you are fortunate. Your HRD, Minister of State, Mr. Dhotre, is very learned. He's an engineer from Amravati. He is one of the strong person from Maharashtra. He is doing good job. But why the top leadership of education is not so literate? It's very difficult. I'm not saying literate means just the qualifications, but in terms of their engagement in education is not so much. This is somewhere the top focus in education remained political. It remained most communist centric. It has not become more inclusive or more open. So this is one thought which always bothers me. And last, you talked about research, industry connect. Yes, industry also is looking out for research. So I have been at the forefront of, I am on the national board of CII also. What we are trying to now push India from an assembly-led growth to a design-led growth and export focus. I have studied almost all the economies of the world which has come up very fast is due to a revolution in manufacturing, but not the assembly-led manufacturing or last-mile manufacturing. And that has happened only if you have an export-centric approach. So in this regard, we have been working. Recently, we have come out with a new thought process in manufacturing by introducing import substitution-led policies. We are trying to replace with export-led growth with innovation and creating a value chain. So somehow, on a policy frame, we are still working out how to actually make it India. India has a challenge being a federal nation. What center tries to do, it's very difficult to implement in the states. Most of the big states are not with BJP government. So the line of thought varies. Sometimes just because government of India is doing or PM is doing, these people are trying to oppose. Where such things should come to an end, especially in regards to the developmental aspects or financial aspects, or most important, HRD aspect. So I would leave it to you to answer this if it suits you. Thank you.
Yeah, so just to respond to, quickly respond to, the questions or the suggestions that you've made. The first, of course, about the education ministers, I must say that Mr. Prakash Zavadekar was very learned. Though, of course, he came from a background of working in Bank of Maharashtra, but because I think he hailed from Pune city and a city of education and, was always interested in education. And his wife is a management expert. She led one of the higher education institutions in the city. So, he's been very open to, ideas. And I would say that this whole national education policy, the architecture, if you look at it, has been his brainchild. And I must give that credit to him. The present education minister, of course, is a poet and has written a lot of books. So I must say that he must be literate and educated, but he's a good man. So at least he's not, he's not negative, but more positive towards education. Beyond these two, I won't want to really respond to the others because we all know who they were and it's best not, spoken about them. Now, the second point is about digital education that you spoke, and so very rightly, you mentioned this. See, India does require digital education. India does require, universities to churn out online degrees and affordable online degrees, not only affordable, but very cheap online degrees. But, to those who that we wish to provide, do they have access to, access to or do they have the bandwidth or the access to this digital education? That's the biggest challenge. I think it's like a chicken and egg. I mean, if you have institutions like Manipal and Symbiosis and BITS Pilani actually, creating, say, a BA or a BCom online degree, and if a student in a remote village wishes to take this degree, which is very, very cheap, maybe just at a few hundred rupees, will he have access to, to technology? So that's the biggest challenge. I'll give you an example of this. So right now, through this online education, we also have schools, by the way, and we have a beautiful school, very well constructed in my father's village at Harari. So, Harari is near Gadinglaj. My father comes from Gadinglaj, and on the way to Goa from Gadinglaj, you have this small village of just 2,000 people, and we've created a beautiful school there, which was inaugurated by Dr. Abdul Kalam, who was a good friend of Symbiosis and Dr. Muzumdar. So he traveled all the way there to inaugurate the school and give a wonderful lecture. But be as it may, what I'm trying to emphasize is that when all the schools went in online education, so did the Harari school had to go. But I mean, how would we provide education? Because it was so, first of all, the parents couldn't afford to have laptops or even desktops at home. Some of them did have smartphones. One parent, which is obviously the father, had a smartphone. But even with the smartphone, how would we provide this education? Because there was no connectivity. So students of all our other kind of elite schools in Pune and Nasik, wherever we have schools, could undergo this education even during the lockdown period and after June and even till now. The students of Harari school are not getting this education because simply we can't do anything. Now, government decided to provide education on television, and I don't believe that because television somehow is linked to entertainment. And you won't have students sitting in front of a television learning something. They would rather see the Cartoon Network on television if they have access to television. So this is the biggest challenge, and what the government has now done is that through the graded autonomy, they have actually created category 1 institutions. So those universities and colleges that have NAC accreditation A++, or they are in the list of the National Institution Ranking NIRF framework amongst the top 100, they are allowed to undergo online education. Allowed to roll out online degrees. But then whom do we roll out these online degrees for? If there is no access, then what do we roll out these online degrees for? So, it's a big, it's still something which is under discussion. While we would love to say that India should, and India does have the consumer base to, take in those online degrees because of the large pool. And as you very rightly said, the gross enrollment ratio will also shoot up the moment you roll out these online degrees. But then how do we roll it out if there is no access and there are no takers for these online degrees? So that's the big challenge. And I think, again, I feel that, you can't rest on the government to do all this. Companies which are in technology should look at this problem, and as a CSR initiative, probably help the government to, create this access to, to the requirement of the necessary bandwidth that these students would require. So companies need to come forward where, this is where industry play a role. And I think the third question was more of your suggestion, and I fully agree with you of what you said, that, we need to be an export-led, economy, and the Services Export Promotion Council that I sit on is definitely discussing this. In fact, we've had several meetings with Piyush Goyal on this subject, and definitely, innovation is going to play a major role, as you very rightly said, that the NITI Aayog keeps talking about exactly what you've said. So discussions are happening, and I think through discussions, implementation of a lot of policies will happen, and we will see this, definitely this change. But how to get these getting industry and academia at the elite institutions is great. Symbiosis and, others likewise, and even maybe your college would have a great industry connect. But this industry connect has to be till the last, mile, in the sense, even a rural college in maybe a Satara, which is not very far from Pune city, how much of industry connect do these colleges have? And that's where I think, the local chambers and, like Kolhapur, whether the Kolhapur has an Industry Development Corporation now, are all colleges in Kolhapur really connected to the industry? Is there a great connect? Is there connect for research? Is there connect for R&D? So these are issues that finally the leadership of these institutions need to take forth. So because you play a major role, a kind of a double role of, being on both sides, you understand the importance, but whether other principals and other education leaders do understand, I still have my doubts.
Yeah, Madam, I must also add up to this one of the topic which government started creating a revolution in mobiles, and everything became mobile-centric, app-centric to access. See, mobile is only an ICT device, but it's not an intelligent device. It doesn't have creativity. Whereas a laptop or a desktop will have a creativity. You are able to do creativity. So this is what I told CEO NITI Aayog several times. We briefed him, and they agree with it. But somehow, only the tablet revolution came. Every institution started distributing tablets. That's okay with a cloud-based technology. But what we are saying, if you really want to have creative development at the child, why Indians did well 20 years back in computing is because a computer was available to them. The moment we started moving more towards phablets or tablet, there was a product. Intellectually, they could not do as better as they could have done earlier. So we need to understand, and some top institution should come forward. And under the aegis of NEP, because we have almost 9 million teachers in the country. Training the teachers, there is no plan. There is only a statistical plan. Only private and top institutions do. But if you go to down the line, rural India does not train teachers. They are just either they are self-motivated or they have no direction. So we need to integrate from a very technology perspective. And if on EduVision, if you have some thoughts where technology and education can integrate and could be a resource or a media of taking our agenda of driving education to the nation forward, and I think we should now start also focusing. National education policy has created a path, but how do we integrate? I have been doing it today also at 2:30. I have a board meeting where Dell MD is my vice chairman. So he has been also leading it, this initiative. So we are trying to now take this as a larger agenda. I would seek your support also in further initiatives.
Most certainly, we'll be more than happy to support, and I agree with you. And certainly, I mean, we all know that how laptops play, obviously are far better than the tablets or your mobile phone when it comes to creativity. But I think this should be dealt at a state level. I mean, if you
sure.
The central government and the NEP to do everything for you, it doesn't happen. I think you need at the state level and good industry support as well.
Sure. Thank you. Blaze.
Thank you, Dr. Vidya. Thank you, Dr. Vidya, for an absolutely engaging and enlightening session. I'm sure it was a highly enriching experience for our participants. It's now time for the Q&A session. I would like to call Mrs. Cheryl De Silva to kindly take over.
Thank you, Akshada. Ma'am, one of the questions that came up was, how do you see physical education in the new education policy?
So can I answer?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
So I didn't cover it. I mean, I haven't covered everything that was written in the National Education Policy, but yes, I should have covered this, that health and wellness is something that they have discussed in the National Education Policy. And when it comes to health and wellness, it's not just about the physical health, but it's the physical, mental, spiritual, and social health. So as a doctor, I believe that, health plays a major role at Symbiosis. Just to quote, I mean, don't mind me quoting examples of what we do, but I think it's best to share case studies and practices. So at Symbiosis, we have actually transformed Symbiosis International University to a health promoting university. So we have regular checkups of all our students, right from school, that is kindergarten to PhD. All our students undergo a rigorous health checkup. And beyond that, of course, there are a lot of health promoting activities. So we have healthcare centers on all our campuses. Apart from that, we give a lot of encouragement to sports. So, we ensure that, every student, and of course, we have gyms and aerobic studios and swimming pools and everything on every campus of Symbiosis. So not only that we just have them, but we ensure that students attend the gym or do some sport, because they are marked attendance also. And if not, then it is conveyed to the director of the institution that they're not going through physical exercise. We have a Symbiosis Center for Emotional Well-being, because we believe that as much as physical health is important, mental health is equally important. And again, this is has been made a mention of in the National Education Policy. So especially in these times of COVID, how mental health has really gone for a toss. And therefore, the Center for Emotional Well-being, through this center, we have counselors on every campus, and that has really helped our students so much, because no matter how well you teach and how good you teach in classrooms, if the mindset of students is not conducive enough to absorb what you teach, then obviously what is that teaching really meant for. So, and you students come from different family backgrounds, so you don't know what the back end of that or what has been the environment from where the student has come. And therefore, I think we really need to create a very conducive and healthy environment on college campuses and university campuses. So definitely health has been given importance in this NEP. And as education institutions, I think we also need to pay more attention to the, and I would not suggest just physical education, but both physical and mental education. So have I answered this question?
Yes, thank you, ma'am, for your answer. There's another question from an education consultant who has 15 plus years of experience. And the question is, how can I get associated to support and empower the new education policy at Symbiosis?
Can you say it again? I mean, I didn't.
Yes, the question asked is, how can I get associated to support and empower the new education policy? This person has 15 plus years of experience in education and is an education consultant. I think
so. This person would like to support the implementation of the new education policy at Symbiosis.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
He can certainly write to me. You can share my email ID with the person, and then I will take this forward.
All right. All right. Thank you. Another question is about the multi-stream flexibility, ma'am. Does the university or the college have the infrastructure to allow such multi-stream flexibility?
So actually, we have to create that infrastructure. I mean, no college will have the infrastructure, but if there is a vision and if there is a strategic plan, then an infrastructure needs to be created. Again, giving an example, so what we did was that we, even much before the NEP was rolled out, we believed in this multidisciplinary education because we believe that if we have different disciplines, why can't a student actually enjoy some other disciplines also and take in some credits from other disciplines? So we have an interdisciplinary credit transfer program at Symbiosis, and we have 12 floating credits, as we call them. So if an undergraduate program at Symbiosis, which is a 3-year program, has 150 credits or 25 credits in a semester, then out of which 12 credits the students can take from other institutions of Symbiosis. So imagine a law student would want to take a few credits from fashion design from our design school, or maybe from liberal arts. He or she can actually do that. So you have to create this flexible infrastructure. Now, I don't know how much of it your affiliating university will allow you to do, but with the national education policy and with a more stress on multidisciplinary education, I'm sure universities that are affiliating universities will also allow colleges to create such infrastructure. So when I said that why don't you set up a center for liberal arts or some other disciplines, it is exactly for this, that a commerce student could take up some arts courses, an art student can take up some commerce courses, and that kind of flexibility you need to create in your
Thank you, ma'am, for your answer. I request Mr. Blaise Pastavir to please ask his question. I believe he has a question for you.
Good afternoon, and thank you for your lovely presentation. Well, according to me, the new education policy, you cannot follow.
Can you introduce yourself, please, so that ma'am gets a clear idea about CI and all?
Okay, ma'am, I'm the current chairman of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Goa State. I'm a businessman by profession, but I've been involved with education at different levels. I'm also a faculty at as a visiting faculty, and have been involved in some of the government committees on education. Was involved in the BBA program that was started in Goa some years ago. So I have more interest than just being a parent. Of course, my kids are out of school now, but more interest, and I have on behalf of CI, we have done some program. Program similar to this, and also I have written a column on the NEP. But getting back to my question, I have nothing to say about it's impressive that what they want to achieve with this new education policy. But one of the things that's good is that they have finally decided that education is something that is important. So this means that the government is going to put money into education. in this portfolio. Is that something that is possible in the near term? The NEP, suppose in Goa, they want to launch it from 2021. Is this feasible with this kind of funding? So they want to do a lot, but can they do it?
So,
the second thing, I'll ask the question and you can just answer them on the roll. Is this language policy? You know, they want to push Sanskrit, fair enough, but everybody knows the business of getting jobs is English. I mean, you can learn Sanskrit as a hobby or something, but if it's pushed, and this 3-language formula, which according to me is the deal breaker as far as this NEP is concerned, given its best intentions, the states are not going to just think, and they could have used this pandemic time to discuss this issue more thoroughly, but they launched the NEP. So this is the language. Is it going to create any issue, according to you, to meet those visionary statements or visionary policy? The whole idea of this NEP seems to create, yes, definitely industry will benefit from the focus on research, is to create better educated students. But according to me, people have to have a focus on getting a job. I mean, the ultimate aim of learning or doing is to be able to become self-sufficient and earn. So if you're going to look at students as a resource and without looking at what is their job potential, is that going to work? Because they can enter, it's very good that they can enter and come out and you can finish your education maybe later if you have any difficulty. But corresponding tweaking of other things has not been considered. How do students go in and out with an apprentice program? I mean, if he leaves in 3rd year in engineering or he leaves at 12th standard, how does it connect to the apprenticeship programs? How does it connect to the job? Because today we just go by the final certificate. All jobs are on the final certificate. So these are a few of my queries, and maybe you can discuss them. But
very good questions, Mr. Kostabir. I think you must have studied the education policy pretty well. The fact that you've written an article on it also. So there are 3 questions. One is related to language. The second is related to flexibility and thereby employability. And the third, which you mentioned, was related to funding for the implementation part of the NEP. So let me take the second question first, of the language. Now, there has been a lot of discussion, and I think let's not get into the politics of why 3 languages. And we've also discussed about the education policy also talks about. I mean, I haven't spoken at all about the school education because we were talking to college faculty. So where they have mentioned about the whole education being focused with teaching in mother tongue. Now we all know that while it's great for a child to learn in his or her own mother tongue, but English has its own importance. If you have to, I mean, on one side you're talking about global citizenship, and on the other side you cannot say that, okay, I'm going to teach my child only in Tamil or whatever Konkani or Marathi or whatever, right? So as you very rightly said, that English does play a major role. Now they then talk about a 3 language. So the argument is that while you teach your child at the early childhood stage in mother tongue, but we are also talking about 3 languages, and those 3 could be the mother tongue language, the English, and maybe Sanskrit or any other language. So they've not really specified which other, but they give a focus to 3 language. Now, I had a long discussion with a lady called Dr. Vinita Kaul, who has actually been the architecture or has helped this task force to say, in the discussions or the deliberations which happened for the ECC, the early childhood education, okay, the first 5 years. And she very rightly believes, and her belief is not just her belief, but it's supported by her own research, and it's evidence-based with large number of longitudinal studies that she's done, that the early childhood education is best taught in the mother tongue of the child. But I argued on the same with her also, and where she said exactly that is why we brought in the 3 language, discussions also in the NEP, so that English also has a major role to play, and we all know that it does. So this is more of a political debate than really, but I think as academia we know that while whatever the NEP would prescribe, we know that finally whether it's higher education or even middle school and higher school education has to be done in English, because the kind of confidence that a child gets, because finally the language of the land today is supposed to be Hindi, but it's not. I mean, each one of us does converse in English. We don't converse in our own mother tongue, even in the state of Maharashtra. How much of Marathi do we speak? We speak with each other more in English than Marathi when it comes to professional talks or business talks. And in this kind of backdrop, you cannot just set a stage and say that, oh no, but the language of that land is very important, while it is, because it does connect you to your roots. But that doesn't mean that you should not learn the other language, or you should not be conversant and professionally educated in the language of the world, or at least the language of professional and business communication. So I fully agree with you that there has been a lot of debate, and debates at various levels, more political debates than any. And of course, some of the states have been very, very vehement in the discussions on this whole language issue. So that is my response to this second question. The first question was on funding and how do you implement this national education policy. And I was very surprised to know that, because of my very close interactions with the Ministry of Education, and specifically the Secretary and UGC, of course, that they have already started, the plan for the implementation of NEP. And I sit on one of the task forces of the implementation, which was on global outreach, which is internationalization and global outreach. I'm a member of the task force, and already UGC has formed, for every aspect of what we discuss now, there has been a task force for implementation, a committee that has been established for implementation of that part of the NEP. So government is moving very fast. Now, of course, yes, the state governments will have to fund a lot of what this implementation is all about. But I would also suggest that there are certain things that may not require funding. It will just require a change in mindset. So while a large number of, let us also understand that almost 68% of higher education rests with the private sector. So government doesn't fund it. So when we talk about funding, it is to the remaining part of the higher education system. So cannot a Symbiosis or a Damodar college, or maybe some other, say a Manipal or a BITS Pilani, why can't it implement a NEP? Because anyways, it's not going to receive any funding. It will be probably only seeking funding for the research part of the NEP. But the rest we will certainly be able to implement. So why can't we look at that aspect of where the funding is not required by the private sector, or not given to the private sector, I would say? Can a large part of it be implemented, at least in piecemeals, of what you think that your priority could be? And of course, the state governments will certainly have to buy this, or else it's not going to work. I mean, if you have an anti-nationalistic policy and you say that, okay, my government is not the government that actually rolled out this policy, then I mean, nothing is going to happen. But I don't think really it has received very, very many negative remarks by even those states that don't have the BJP-led governments. So everybody has well accepted, and I think it is because of Dr. Kasturi Rangan, who is a scientist and who's been the forefront and the face of this national education policy. I guess most state governments have now the implementation plan. Like even when I sit on the committees, the biggest hurdle is that what happens to those public institutions that are funded by the state governments. So while we would have an excellent implementation plan for, say, global outreach, but say if I have to set up an international office in an affiliated college in Pune city, where would the money come from to set up the international office, right? So these are the parts that will have to be definitely discussed and developed. But honestly, I think as time goes, we will be able to know what the mind of the government is. For at least BJP-led governments, I'm sure there'll be a diktat that will come from the top. For the other states, I really don't know what's going to happen. So that's my second answer. The third is that flexibility. Now, if you look at, I'll give you an example again. I'm so sorry of giving examples of Symbiosis, but that's the best I could give. That doesn't mean that there are no other examples of other universities and colleges, but something that, so as I said that we have a school of liberal arts, okay? And so where would liberal arts students really be placed? I mean, should we really look at the onus of placing liberal arts students? Was a question that we asked ourselves, because any student who gets admission into any program, even if it is a general program of a commerce or arts, leave alone the management and the engineering and the other types, definitely joins a college where he or she believes that I will get employed with the degree from that college or from that university, right? So, so when we set up the School of Liberal Arts, we believe that these students should get a holistic knowledge. They should be kind of jack of all trades, and should be able to absorb, should be able to be absorbed in any organization and so on. But so initially the placements, after a 4 years program, obviously after 4 years, after they passed out, many of them joined think tanks. They were very good in research. They were very good in creative writing. They were very good in organizations like Niti Aayog, which is again a think tank of the government. Most of our students got absorbed in Niti Aayog initially as interns. Then of course they were placed, and several such NGOs and other stuff. You won't believe it. Recently, Cummins, which is a hardcore manufacturing company, came for placements of liberal arts students because they believed that they needed more generalists and people who thought out of the box than really specialized mechanical engineering people. Because they felt that if I have to innovate in my company, and which most companies have to do, then I need to have people who will think out of the box, who will be more generalist, and who will not have specific knowledge of a specific subject like a tunnel view and cannot think out of what they have exactly learned. And therefore, I think the focus of this new education policy, when it talks about a multidisciplinary education, a more holistic education, is to create people who will fit into any kind of job. I mean, post-pandemic, when jobs are lost and when the economy has really gone down and we don't know what the fate of industries is going to be, you and I cannot really predict of what kind of education am I supposed to give in my college or my university, because I don't know what kind of job will remain after 2 years for a student. Earlier, I could predict, our MBA directors could predict which are the companies that would come and what kind of profiles that my students needed. Today, can you really predict? No. So what kind of people are we creating? We have to create people who will fit into any kind of, any square. And therefore, we will have to create more generalists, at least at the undergraduate level. Maybe at the PG level, you will have to have more focused education. It could be. But right now, I'm a very strong proponent of I'm for skill-based education, but just not only skill-based education. See, because that's for a different class of people. But when you talk about being a university, you have to give universal knowledge. And when you talk about universal knowledge, it has to be holistic and multidisciplinary. And I would rather hire people who have more holistic knowledge than really be a very specialist in a particular subject. I mean, if I were running an industry, I would rather, because see, training people, see, today also when I give specific knowledge, industry does need to retrain these people. Why? Why should industry retrain if the education institutions are providing the best education? So this is a debate that is going to go on. And I think for the next 10 years at least, we will see a change in the education system and the requirement of the industry, which is so vague right now. I mean, while IT companies do require IT professionals, they also require people who have a different mindset, who are, more positive. And why do you think companies are doing psychometric analysis when they hire people, when they hire students from campuses? Because they also need people with positive mindsets. I mean, I may be an excellent IT professional, but if my mindset is not positive or it is negative, then I mean, whatever skills that I have, I will not put them to the right use. And we know what kind of people we generate as engineers when the world gets disrupted through terrorism. So these are debates that will go on and for a long time. But I'm quite a proponent of generalist education and holistic and multidisciplinary education. While you need to have in-depth knowledge of course, certain areas, but you also need to know about what I'm a medical professional. I wouldn't have been able to talk like this if I hadn't spent 20 years in symbiosis, because our medicine knowledge is so very tunnel view that I would just go to my OPD, look at my gynec and OB. I'm an OBGY specialist. I will just interact with those people and only those kind of diseases that I would, or conduct deliveries. And beyond that, what was my knowledge? Symbiosis opened up my knowledge. I mean, the position that I am now, and I've actually grown into this position. I mean, I joined at a very much lower level because my father never believed that we should perch from the top and we should know the grass. I mean, we should work at the grassroots level. So did I. And that's where, when I interacted with people like Dr. Rajni Gupta and Dr. Bhama Venkatramani and people from other disciplines, I would attribute my knowledge to all of them. And of course, the positions that I got to be on UGC. So, it's just the environment that you give to an individual that actually hones up the knowledge base of that individual. And I think as colleges and universities, we need to create this holistic environment for every child who's with us, men and women who pass out, all these young people, because they are, and present generation is so dynamic. I mean, and they're also very, I would say that they also look at short-term gains. And whereas we need to give them that security of imparting knowledge so that it remains for long with them, it is more sustainable. So anyways, this is a long discussion that can go on, Mr. Kostabir. I think we can discuss on this whole multidisciplinary aspect of education, at a maybe a different session altogether. So I hope I've answered some of your questions, not to your satisfaction, but I tried to attempt to answer your questions.
Thank you, ma'am and sir, for your question. I request Akshada to please take over the session.
Thank you, ma'am Cheryl. We have now come to the end of this highly engaging and informative session. On this note, I would like to call upon our principal, Professor Preeta Malya, to kindly propose the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I can think of no more pleasurable task than saying thank you at the close of an event. It gives us an opportunity to express our gratitude to all those who have contributed to making the event a success. But before I go there, I would just like to say, Mr. Nitin, I was waiting for Mr. Nitin Kukolkar to say this, but he didn't, so I will. We are stepping into the Vidya Vikas Mandal, stepped into the 50th year, and it is an honor for us that a graduate of Shree Damodar College, the first institution set up by Vidya Vikas Mandal, a graduate of Damodar College is heading Vidya Vikas Mandal today, to take us into the 50th year of the Mandal as well as the 50th year of the college. So from there, coming to the vote of thanks, Dr. Vidya, it has been an eye-opener, the session that you delivered. We are extremely grateful to you for having accepted our invitation and accepted it so willingly. And the connections that you made with Goa, we would now call you a Wellinkar. Anybody who belongs to the village and to the deity, we will now consider you a Wellinkar and we will consider you a Goan, so very much one of ours. You were talking about symbiosis and Professor Muzumdar. My remembrance or my memories of Professor Muzumdar are of a very scholarly, very unassuming gentleman walking through the campus. As you know, Ferguson campus, the science buildings were on one side and I was an economics student, so we were on the other side. So we knew him as, when the foreign students would point him out and say that, we can study in Pune, we can study in Ferguson College because of Dr. Muzumdar. And the building with its, very distinctive appearance of the flags of various countries. I think those are my memories of Symbiosis. And many of my classmates did go on to teach at Symbiosis College of Commerce and Arts. And a very good friend of mine has now become the Vice Chancellor of your university. Dr. Rajani Gupta and I go back a long way. We're very good friends. So thank you once again for that very lucid and very fluent presentation on the new education policy. It has opened our eyes to many of the opportunities that we can take up. I must confess that, when we first saw the policy and we said, oh, it's going to be one of those things that, so wonderful and so grand on paper, but it's going to bite the dust at the stage of implementation, partly because of funding. Where is the money going to come from, to make every institution multidisciplinary and all the other things that were discussed. But as you just said, it's possible to start, in areas that possibly where funding is not needed, possibly those are areas that we can start. So thank you once again, ma'am, for that very wonderful and your experience and your immersion in education came through at every sentence that you were speaking. My sincere thanks to the Honorable Vice Chancellor also of Symbiosis University for being present, the Registrar of Goa University, Dr. Radhika Naik, for the occasion, the principals of all colleges, the members of management of other colleges, as well as my members of management, Mr. Kostabir. I saw there was a question from Mr. Deepak. I think it did not get addressed. So many of our members are also here. The commitment of managements and principals to the cause of education is evident from their presence at this, and they've been there till the very end. The Honorable Vice Chancellor of Goa University sent his regrets, he had some prior commitments that he could not get out of. Otherwise, he would have definitely joined us today. Several principals also sent me similar messages that they could not attend because of other commitments. So they've asked me to share the recordings, which I will do. I thank all of them for their presence as well as their good wishes. There are many, many teachers present, some in the Zoom room and some attending through YouTube. As Dr. Vidya has said, and as the NEP says, that, this the policy will not happen with the best of intentions of managements unless teachers participate in this process of implementation of the NEP. So I congratulate all the teachers and thank them very much for attending. There are school teachers also, I see, some school at all levels of education. I would also like to thank our PTA executive committee members. I see some of them are also here, some ex-students of the college, the association of the college also present. Finally, my gratitude to the event coordinator, Dr. Rodney De Silva, who is the vice principal of the college, and the technical team of Shree Damodar College, which works quietly and efficiently behind the scenes for a very faultless, delivery, faultless performance. Also, your office, ma'am, your Pro-Chancellor's office, Mr. Madhav Kondamgiri and Ms. Bhavna Tiwari, who have coordinated very well and have been, even without speaking to you, we were able to get the whole thing going. I would like to leave all of you with a slightly, on a slightly lighter note. Before we had this event, the president of the Mandal had asked all the principals of the Mandal institutions to give him a list of, what are the opportunities that NEP offers. So all of us had done our homework and I had given him a list of 20 items. I don't know whether he has seen it. But the next thing he said was, this is all very well, but get somebody who knows. So that is the background, ma'am, to this event. And I'm 2000% sure that before I leave this, there'll be another email in my box saying that now that we've had this, now let's look at the opportunities again. So thank you one and all once again for attending this and for making this happen. Dr. Vidya, please be assured that we will take you up on your very generous offer of collaboration. We'll be there at your doorstep for anything and everything. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Vidyaji. And I would also request, once these COVID issues are settled, I would request your visit to some of our major events and bless us with, we would like to grow further. And we are mostly in charities, but still we would like to deliver the best to the society. And we look forward to your visit to our campus as well. And next time in Goa, I would love to host you at my house as well. That would be a real pleasure. And
sure.
Thank you.
Dr. Nipun, on behalf of Goa University, ma'am, I would like to say a deep sense of gratitude on behalf of Goa University to Professor Vidya and to Damodar College for organizing this event. Thank you very much.
But last but not least, I would like also to thank Akshada and Cheryl for coordinating this very well. Great job, Akshada, and Swati as well. Thank you all. Rajni,
thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for inviting me. And I hope we can see some symbiotic relationship between the two organizations.
Pleasure. In fact, Law College also would seek your guidance because we have a good Law College. We would like to take it forward to a higher agenda. We can certainly look forward. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. God bless.
Can I leave?
Yeah, please. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Gupte, Dr. Rajni. Yeah, thank you.
Requesting participants to kindly switch on your webcams as we take pictures.
I will exit as I have my next board meeting scheduled now at 2 o'clock, so I have to prepare for it. Thank you.
Thanks,
okay, sir, no worries.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
The The feedback form link has been shared in the chat box, requesting all the participants to kindly fill the feedback form. Once again, thank you all for being a great audience.